So now we're going to look at another technique, and this one I actually use quite a bit. Um, a lot of times people will have a whole big set of records that they need to enter into a table, and those records may, let's say, may come from the same location. So they're adding the same um, location value into a location field, say. So it might be city. In fact, that's what we'll do in this one. Say they have a city, Wichita, and they put in the first record, and then they got to put in the second record, and then they got to put in the third record. And we already saw that we could set a default value in the table on that field that the control's bound um, to make Wichita come up automatically. But what happens if today it's Wichita and tomorrow it's Kansas City, and then the next day it's Topeka, and then, or maybe I've got a whole bunch of Wichitas, and then suddenly I've got a whole bunch of Kansas Cities. Is there a way that I could dynamically set that default value? In other words, when there is a change to the value in that field, can have it come up so that from on new records now, it'll continue to have that value until I change it again, and then it'll come up with that value over and over. And the answer is yeah, you can do that through a macro, and it's actually extremely easy to do. So in this one, we're going to do S03-E03 dynamic default value. I'm just going to open that file up. And then we got a very simple database. I just have a person subject form. And you see one of the fields on here is city. Now you notice here there is not a default value set here at the field itself. All right. And in fact, we won't be using that property. We're going to use instead a property that's on a control that's bound to that field to hold that value, to hold the default value. So if I look at the form for this, and it's just a typical subject form. Okay, I got a person name, which is required, and then I got the city. I could have made that required, by the way, if I want to. All right, but let's just run. I'll just show you how this works first, and then I'll explain how it's working. So I've already got some in here that actually have values, different places and all that. Okay, now I'm going to add a brand new one. All right, and maybe I'm going to call it, say this is Teddy Jones or something like that. It's the name of the person, and he's from Wichita. And I go on, and I go to the next record, and another new record. And you see now Wichita's in there. All right, that got set to be the default. So now I could add another person. Um, and if she's from Wichita, terrific, we go on. And we keep doing that. We're going to keep getting Wichita on new records now. But now let's say I've done a whole bunch of Wichitas, and now I want to do somebody from Kansas City. So, um, and he's from Kansas City. Oops. And I go on to the next record. And you see now it's Kansas City. So I can enter a new person from Kansas City. And if he's from Kansas City, I can go on. And I keep doing that until I get another city. Uh, Maybe it's back to Wichita. You see now I'm poised to get Wichita in there again. And I'll keep doing that back and forth until I finally close this down. Now when I reopen it and open to a new one, it won't remember the last, I'm sorry, let me close it down. And I'll reopen it. Now it's reopening on the first one, okay, but if I go to a brand new one, you'll see it doesn't have one in there. Okay, but as soon as I type a new one in there, it'll be in there for this session with this form. As soon as I close it down, it goes back to its initial state. So how did I do that? Actually, incredibly easy. I'm going to design, and I'm going to open up the properties for this control. Now, I've already named this control. I've named it CTB, control text box, person dash city. All right, so it's a text box control. That's all it is, okay? But remember, we have the ability to override inherited values. Now, we didn't inherit a default value. There wasn't anything over in the field. but I still have a default value property here. And where is it again? I always forget. Right here, you have default value. All right. And this could hold a default value. So it could hold Wichita, it could hold Kansas City. Now, it doesn't have anything in there now. And every time they use this, it won't have anything in there when they open the form because I don't actually have anything encoded in there and saved. All right. What I'm going to do instead is I use that in a temporal fashion. And basically, while this is open, I could actually store a value in there, set a value for this property, store the value in there, and then go to the next one, and it'll still be there because we haven't shut down that form, and it'll keep using that then as the default value until I actually change the value that's in here. How does that happen? We see the after update property. That only runs after a value has been changed in this field. Okay, so in other words, if it's in a null state. As soon as I add Wichita to it, now it's actually updated, and on its after update property, it would run that macro. Okay, now that's interesting too. If I went to a record that already exists and I change this, it would run the macro too, and whatever I change that one to would be available then for any record. So maybe the last one I put in here, it was wrong. I need to go change the city. And now I got more for that city. I bring up a new one. It'll be poised to have that new city in here. That's all going to be taken care of. And this is the macro that does it. Open it up and you'll see it says set value. It's a set value command. And you get that from this show all actions. That's why you have to have them both up there. Okay. Set value. And you make the item value equal to the reference for the property default value on that particular control. So the controls reference is form person, that's the form that the person's in. The name of the control, CBT person-city dot default value. Okay, that's the property. All right, so we're going to set the property for that control, and we set it to, and this is where it took me a long time to figure this out. I kept just using the expression and it just would never work. And then I realized the expression had to be evaluated as a string. So it's got an unusual syntax where I've got double quotes, a single quote, and double quotes, ampersand, and then the value that's actually in the field. After the update, it's got that value in there. So now bring that value out, and then ampersand, double quote, single quote, double quote. Okay, and when this evaluates, it'll evaluate as a string with single quotes around it. I know that's a little bit unusual, but that is a way that we basically create a string when we have a variable within it. You need to have it quoted somehow, but you need to have quotes around the quote, basically. So I could have done single quote, double quote, single quote on both of these, and that would have worked too. But I usually do double quote, single quote, double quote, and then the ampersand, then the variable, and then the ampersand again, and then double quote, single quote, double quote again. So that will then set the default value to be whatever value I actually entered into that. And it stays that then. This won't run on subsequent records, new records, unless I actually change that field. There is no after update event unless I actually change it to, when I change from Wichita to Kansas City, then it would run. But if I just left it at Wichita, this wouldn't run. So there's no overhead in doing this. It doesn't just keep writing the same value to the default value over and over. It does it once until it's actually changed, and then it does it again. Now, since I put this together, I actually put this together many years ago, okay? There is a new property called set property, and I believe you could use it instead of set value. But I know this works, so I'm just going to use it. It's right here, set property. If I put it in here, you'll see you give the control name, and then you pick the property off the list. And so, I'll do this. I mean, as well. If I do control name, the control name is CTB person. The fact that that isn't completing. Oh, I bet I don't need to have the brackets around. Yeah, there you go. How about that? This might actually be easier. I'm not going. Even though I believe this will work, I'm not even going to try it because I know this works already, and I'm happy with it. But then I would pick the property would be listed there for that too. So I should have default in here somewhere. Oh, you know what? I don't. Isn't that interesting? So maybe you can't use this. Well, I am very surprised that that doesn't show the default value, thing for the default value. Don't get default value mixed up with value. Value actually means the value of the control. It would stuff something else. It would actually return the value of the control. All right, so I guess we can't use this one. You have to use set value. So it doesn't work for all the properties. Isn't that interesting? Well, I just learned something. But anyway, pretty simple thing to do. And again, something I do quite a bit because you do get this situation where you develop your databases for somebody who is going to add a lot of data at one time. And there may be several fields where they are going to repeat themselves over and over and over and over and over and over. And if you don't have a drop down, then they're actually typing it out, and they can make errors and all that. So in that case, if I know they're the fields like that, like city or citizenship or something like that, where they would type out those values, and I could actually stick those in there. Will it work on a drop down? I think it will. I think you could set it on a drop down as long as you use obviously the right whatever. When I say drop down, a lookup combo box, as long as you use whatever value it's bound to. So in that case, you would have to use if you were doing lookups like we've been doing, where we were bounding to a primary key, you'd have to use the primary key value instead of a literal value like the name of the city. So anyway, but that is how that works, and it's very simple to do. So that's this technique. And we will close it out now and go on to the next one.